I don't know if this is going to cause the next financial crisis, but it's definitely going to shake things up at some point. And I would not be surprised if when it does, it turns out to produce a worse crash than we've ever experienced before. My concerns coming up. Welcome back, everybody. Real quick, if this is your first time here, my name is Steven Spicer. It's my goal to help you invest smarter. Now, if you've been here before or read my book, you probably know that I'm not a fan of the buy and hold, stock and bond only approach that you hear almost everyone else out there regurgitating. I think it's a potentially ruinous posture to assume. And here's the start of one of the reasons why. It starts with the ever unfolding story of the United States out of control debt load. The US national debt is currently racing towards $27 trillion. And this figure here on usdebtclock.org is not even accounting for our unfunded liabilities, like a corporate balance sheet would have to account for in order to meet generally accepted accounting standards. I'm talking about the promises the government has already made for future Social Security payments, Medicare, Medicaid, etc. The estimates for those obligations range anywhere from an additional $100 to $200 trillion. Without all that, this is the US national debt, $26.7 trillion and increasing rapidly. That comes out to more than $81,000 per citizen. And more relevantly, to the government at least, that's almost $215,000 per taxpayer. You can see that historically, this figure has understandably jumped during times of crisis. Take 2008, for example. The stimulus expended there made a noticeable difference. But look at the changes in 2020. The leap dwarfs the one caused by the Great Recession. The trajectory has almost turned parabolic, going straight up. But of course, it's never fair to just look at one variable. For example, if you just look at the debt side of my balance sheet as I continue to expand my real estate empire, well, that would look bad. But when you see the full picture, when you compare the debt to the value of my total assets over time, or a better comparison in this case would be to the amount of income that I'm able to now generate. Anyway, only then can you truly fairly evaluate whether or not that debt growth is sustainable or worrisome. So in this case, with the US government, let's compare the nation's debt to its gross domestic product, GDP, the value of all the goods and services produced and provided within the country over the course of a year. Here's a look from the mid-1960s through today. So around 1980, for example, the United States federal debt load was just over 30% of what we produced. We've maintained a pretty steady trajectory upward since that time. And in this case, up is bad. Up is more unsustainable. In fact, the only other time we've seen this ratio higher than 100%, meaning, by the way, that the country's debt is higher than all of its citizens and companies are able to produce over an entire year. Companies, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, Google, let that sink in. The only other time we've been that high was during World War II. Understandable. And you can see the seemingly obvious effort to get that back under control once we were out of that mess. World War II, I mean. But zoom in on this last decade. Obviously, as we started here, we were recovering from the Great Recession, but even well after that, there really haven't been any signs of anyone taking their foot off the gas. And this data that we're looking at right here is by year, so it's only through the end of 2019. Guess what? It's much worse today. Worse, in fact, than ever before. Worse even than World War II. With a GDP of around $20 trillion and a debt of $27 trillion, things aren't looking so good. You could point to unique circumstances, you could point to stimulus, you could make whatever excuse, but that wouldn't change the fact of how precarious and unprecedented this situation really is. But even with those unique circumstances aside, it's not like the government hasn't been consistently increasing their spending over the years. Here, we can see the US government spending over the last 3 years. We can see the consistent pattern and direction. Only once in the last 3 years has it dipped even just a little bit. But of course, Just looking at 3 years could be misleading, so let's zoom out even further. Again, the trajectory here is clear. And with all of this stuff, it's really hard to rein it all back in. Like, worse than putting toothpaste back in the tube. Can you imagine? A precedent has been set. To cut back would require breaking some painful, likely unpopular news to some group, many groups, not a skill politicians are particularly known for. But here we are once again looking at a single variable, not totally fair. Fine. So we should look at the other side of government spending, the revenue, taxes. The comparison of a given year's revenues to spending provides us with the metric known as the US government's deficit, the amount they spent above what they brought in. Here's a year-by-year breakdown of the last decade. As we noted earlier, even in the good years, we're still running up that old national debt tab by running a fiscal budget deficit. The range over the previous 9 years was between negative $400 billion and negative $1.3 trillion. Even when things are going relatively well, we're not paying off any of our old debt. So far in 2020, the government's fiscal year ends on September 30th, the deficit is more than $3 trillion. That's right around what we're bringing in. And that's the deficit. That means the government is spending twice what it's making. This is effectively borrowing against the future, against our future, against hopes of insane future growth. But as we've seen, even when we're in years without a pandemic, without a global recession, without a world war, the government still finds ways to dig the hole for future generations deeper and deeper. How long will it take before this finally catches up to us? Who knows? Will it take 500 years? I think most would agree that it'll need to be rectified sometime before then. Fair enough? At the same time, that number is probably just about as arbitrary as any other guess. 500 years, 5 years, 5 days? Who really knows? No matter when it does catch up to us, whatever calamity it brings with it, 5 days before that point, nobody would have really expected it to happen that quickly. Whatever the case may be, I suspect the longer we kick the can down the road, the more painful that moment will be. And maybe there is some magical, peaceful way to gradually ease ourselves out of this mess. Although, maybe possible, that seems far less likely a scenario than a more panicked and chaotic economic crash. At some point, and I get the impression that just about everyone knows this deep down inside, in the back of their minds, at some point we're going to have this come to Jesus moment, when it feels like all hell is breaking loose, when it feels like the unpredictable is happening, when pundits and advisors will just fall back on their same platitudes as they always do, that
no one could have seen this coming. It's never happened before. Unprecedented.
Will the market take a massive hit as a result? How low will it go? How long will it be suppressed? Will it ever recover? Probably, maybe, but I don't know for sure. No one really can know. And that's the point. Bottom line, we haven't been here before. Things are obviously different. When conditions, variables are different, it's nonsensical to definitively draw the same conclusions, right? Can we agree on that? If you're performing a scientific experiment and you change the variables, the inputs, you're not going to bet on the same outcome each and every time, are you? Yet that's fundamental to the mainstream's stock and bond only buy and hold approach. They'll say,
the market has always bounced back from bad situations in the past. World wars, global depressions, you name it. The market has raged back every time.
And when you say,
well, yes, but the conditions are very different this time around than they have ever been before.
They'll say,
well, yeah, they've always been different. Every one of those scenarios was different with thousands of unique underlying variables, and the market still always bounced back.
That is true. In the past, it has always bounced back. But don't be misled. This argument that fact implies that the same will hold true forever into the future relies on a logical fallacy known as an appeal to ignorance. I'm writing about it in the rewrite I'm doing of my book, Stop Investing Like They Tell You. And you'll definitely see it come up here again on this channel as I help you flesh out the truth and ultimately find better solutions than just the stock and bond, buy and hold, cross your fingers and pray, roll of the dice approach. The Oxford University Press explains the appeal to ignorance. In this fallacy, someone argues that a proposition is true simply on the grounds that it has not been proven false, or that the proposition must be false because it has not yet been proven true. You see, you can prove that it's possible for something to happen just by a single occurrence. It happened. Therefore, it is possible that it can happen. But unfortunately, you can't do the opposite. You can't prove that something will never happen, no matter how much time passes without occurrence. Like Warren Buffett tried to claim about the unstoppable US economy and our national debt. I hate disagreeing with him. It happens so infrequently. Don't be misled by mainstream advisors, pundits, YouTube gurus, and even sadly at times Mr. Buffett, all repeating that same appeal to ignorance. I know for many unable to see it any other way, this will fall on deaf ears. But for those of you who are open-minded and concerned enough to listen, I want you to know that there are better ways to design your financial plan to protect and grow your hard-earned assets. We'll be exploring everything here on this channel and in the coming rewrite of my book. You'll find links to everything in the detailed description below. Wherever you stand, I sincerely appreciate you sticking around here till the end. It says a lot about you. As such, I look forward to getting to know you better and helping however I can. Let me know in the comments who you are by commenting "Stop Investing Like They Tell You," just by itself. And then you can leave a separate comment with your thoughts. We'll pick up the conversation there. Take care.